Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. I am your host, as always, Charles Hamaker. This past week, we had the Seahawks won a game for the first time. Obviously they won last week, but keeping the positive momentum going, winning 2 games back to back. No Mariners news as we continue with the MLB lockout. The Sounders, still no news there. A lot of contract negotiation type things. The MLS Cup did happen over the past week. We have the Storm season schedule announcement coming back at Climate Pledge Arena. So that is big news just to hear the dates for that. The Kraken over the past week struggled a little bit. We will get into that as well. And we have some big news regarding the Oil Reign and the National Women's Soccer League, the expansion draft coming up here on Thursday. So with that being said, there's a lot to go over, of course. We will jump right into it, starting off with our Seattle Seahawks here over the past week, playing the Houston Texans down in NRG Stadium in Houston, winning that game by a score of 33-13. The Seahawks take care of a bad team after a first few drives, really see them struggle. To be honest, it kind of seemed almost like a struggle heading into the fourth quarter. This was a close game, a 1-2 score game heading into the fourth quarter itself, and then Seattle was really able to just pull away. But even despite that, it was one of the less stressful Seahawks games in a while. On the offensive side of the ball, Russell really looked to be back in his own form, had the deep ball going again, really seemed to be more like Russell Wilson. Rashad Penny had the best game of his career. Is it a turning point for him? Is it a realization for him? Obviously a guy who was a first-round pick has been the subject of some controversy simply because of the fact that he was a first-round pick and hasn't produced to that level. Is this game something for him where he stays healthy and he can just jettison his career into the stratosphere from this point going forward? Tyler Lockett recorded his third consecutive 1,000-yard receiving season, joining Steve Largent as the only players in franchise history to do that. So quite a big feature there for Tyler. And it's really interesting that I mentioned that because both Tyler Lockett and Steve Largent are from the same hometown, born on the same day. Coincidence, funny how that works. The defensive side of the ball, the first few drives saw rookie quarterback Davis Mills set the rookie consecutive completion record, and then the defense really was able to settle in and take care of business, lock down whatever sort of minimal run game that Houston had, and be able to disrupt the rookie quarterback there. But overall, 20-point win. Can't complain about that. Really a game that you needed to dominate, and you were able to do so at the end of the day. Looking over to stat leaders here, in the passing department, Russell Wilson back in his usual spot as always, completing 17 of his 28 attempts for 268 yards and 2 touchdowns. So again, Russell Wilson, not a superstar performance necessarily, but really looked more like himself. Didn't have some of the errors that we've seen in the past week since the pin was removed from his middle finger. Rushing-wise, again, Rashad Penny, career day, 16 carries, 137 yards. That is the most rushing yards in a game by a Seahawks player since Thomas Rawls a few years ago against the 49ers, when he had 206 yards. And that, obviously congratulations to Rashad on a big day, but just looking at those two performances and realizing that, the guys who, Thomas Rawls had a solid career as a Seahawk. I won't say it was great. It was okay. Just couldn't stay healthy. And that has been the story with Rashad Penny as well, has not really been able to stay on the field consistently. But he's, the only thing is Rashad is still in the league. Rashad's playing in his contract year, looking to prove himself. Chris Carson's injured. Penny has really taken over the snaps from Alex Collins, and this is a big chance for him to really step in and solidify himself and, probably play for at least another year of a contract this upcoming year. But yes, 137 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Receiving-wise, Tyler Lockett, 5 receptions, 142 yards, and 1 touchdown. Tyler, another consistent day through the year. Really has had some great games this year, starting off against Indianapolis and Tennessee last week against the 49ers, this week against Houston. Tyler's been a really consistent piece, and it's been good to see that after having some struggles last year and even throughout some of the games this year. Tackles-wise, Bobby Wagner, the future Hall of Famer, had 15 total tackles, 6 solo, and 1 tackle for loss. And surprisingly enough, the Seahawks did not force a turnover against Houston. But again, overall, a good game to really set your feet in. And if you want to make the playoffs this year, let alone you want to have a winning record this year, you need to win out from here on out. And the first step in doing that after beating the 49ers was to beat Houston, and more than likely having to do that convincingly. You've got not an easy slate coming up. You've got the Rams coming up next week. At the end of the year, you have the Cardinals. Both of those teams, top 2 in the division. They square off tonight, actually, on Monday Night Football. The Rams being 8-4 and the Cardinals being 10-2. Your division's tough. So for you to sweep the 49ers is a good thing. Solid. But you have lost the first 2 games you played against the Rams and the Cardinals. So those are 2 humps you have to get over. You have to play the Bears still, who put up a decent fight against the Packers last night. Still have to play the Vikings. The Lions, who they've only won 1 game this year, but they've put up a fight in a good amount of their games. So if you want to win out, you want to have a winning record first, let alone worry about playoffs, you have to really get back to basics. Russell Wilson has to return to form, and having Rashad Penny perform like he did in this game really would be a big help in that, getting a balanced offensive attack. The defense, again, allowing below league average in points, which is good. But not having Jamal Adams will still hurt you throughout the end of the year. We will get to injury reports here as injury news is next. Prior to game time, the following players were deemed out on Friday. Running back Adrian Peterson had a lower back injury. Starting right tackle Brendan Shell had a shoulder injury. Star of last week's game, Travis Homer, had a calf and hamstring injuries. Those 2 injuries hindered him from playing this week, pardon me. And then offensive guard / center Kyle Fuller did not play with a calf injury. And also on Friday, strong safety Jamal Adams was placed on injured reserve. He had season-ending shoulder injury on a torn labrum with additional shoulder damage. That surgery was successful, and so now it's just a long road of recovery for Adams. And that was, Adams going down was spurred even more talk about his contract, let alone the trade that Adams was involved in. I understand, when you trade 2 first-round picks, it's hard to equate that value right away in the first 2 years, let alone, equating value ever on draft picks because of how up and down those things can be. But Adams has been a solid, consistent player since he's been here. Everybody's there's been a lot of comparison, and he's been essentially the scapegoat for a lot of things. If the defense doesn't perform well, it's on Adams and his contract. It's not that simple. Adams has been productive in where he's been. He's not been used in the same packages he's been used as last year, where he set the defensive back record for sacks in a season, because teams have recognized, hey, they're going to blitz Jamal Adams. We have to protect against that. And so all sports are games of adjustments. You have to make adjustments to get better and to improve. And teams have adjusted. They can say, hey, Jamal Adams is coming at us on the edge. We can't have that happen. And so Seattle's gotten away from that. Adams has been productive, and it just seemed like he was getting his stride going. Had a pick against the Packers, had one against the Washington football team as well, and then goes down with a shoulder injury, dealing with a torn labrum, the same shoulder that he injured last year. So just hoping to get that right. But I implore you to look away from the bias. I get it. Trading such a big haul for one player is difficult to look at and to really reason with. But Jamal has been somebody that's important. He's not a one-year fix kind of guy. Seattle looked at him as somebody that will help them year in and year out, and he's not exactly an old player. So, again, I want to implore you to look at the whole aspect of that trade, because as the internet does, Adams has been a big talk of the town since that injury took place. Looking at game day inactives against Houston, quarterback Jacob Eason, running back Travis Homer, offensive guard / center Kyle Fuller, right tackle Brendan Shell, cornerback Nigel Warrior, and defensive tackle Robert Nkemdiche were all out of that game inactive. A lot of those guys were mentioned as being out on Friday. Post-game, cornerback Gavin Heslop, who was actually activated in response to Jamal Adams being placed on the IR, suffered a leg injury in that game against the Texans. He had to stay overnight in Houston. Carroll said he likely needs surgery on that leg, so a tough break for a guy, gets his first chance off the practice squad with Adams being out, and then really in his first few snaps against Houston goes down with a relatively gruesome leg injury and has to stay the night in Houston. So not entirely sure if he'll need surgery yet, but that's something we'll have to keep an eye on and check in with you about next week. And then defensive tackle Brian Monet exited the game with a knee injury. It was identified as a knee sprain, and the severity of that is still being determined. In terms of team notes, Tyler Lockett on December 7th was the Seahawks nominee for the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award. Most recently, Russell Wilson won the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award last year in 2020 for the Seahawks. So it'd be cool to see that happen as well. Tyler Lockett was nominated as someone who's really made an impact in the community on and off the field. So good for Tyler there. He's always been a really down-to-earth person, it seems, at least, while he's been here in Seattle. December 8th, reports came out about Russell Wilson strongly considering waiving his no trade clause for the New York Giants, New Orleans Saints, and Denver Broncos. So this report came out from Jordan Schultz. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's because he is the son of Howard Schultz, who was famously part of the selling of the Seattle Supersonics. So with that being said, December 9th, Wilson himself denied the rumors linking him to those three teams and about waiving his no-trade clause, saying, "I didn't say that." He said that he plans to fulfill his contract that ends after 2023 and wants to play in Seattle for 20 years. This is direct from the press conference the day of on December 9th. He said, "I love this place and I love this space." He's focusing on now and not the future. I believe we talked about this a little bit, when we were ramping up to the season. These trade rumors are just rumors. It's speculation. When you've got somebody the magnitude of Russell Wilson, the magnitude of his star, what he's doing, who he is on and off the field, he's going to be the talk of the media. Doesn't matter what aspect that is, whether what he's doing off the field, his wife being Sierra, he's going to be a big media piece to talk about. And so with the news about him being unhappy, wanting better protection this past offseason, it all makes sense as a quarterback. You don't want to get hit. People are going to say, "Oh, maybe he wants to go to a big market like New York." I wouldn't put any stock into it. Wilson's own camp denying this. Wilson himself denying this, and I get it. Players in the past have said, "Oh, I'm not going to do this," and then they go against that. That's something that happens. I understand that. But considering Russell, he's always been a guy who sticks to his word. And to this point, the only legitimate news that we've got about it is from Russell himself and his own camp. So until I get something that's different, until I get legitimate outside and any legitimate knowledge, then we can go off of that. But until then, it's just a guy talking about something that he thinks might happen. That's all we'll go with. It's a rumor, and I don't want to go off rumors here. In league-related news, Jacksonville head coach Urban Meyer has more drama continuing. We talked about this a little bit earlier in the season as Urban Meyer's kind of had a roller coaster of a year. Questions about Meyer's future have reemerged amid multiple run-ins with players and other coaches in the locker room regarding the way he addresses them. Meyer complains about, after their fifth straight loss this past Sunday, Meyer complained about whoever leaked the info on recent internal strife after the team's fifth straight loss. So really interesting to watch it. Obviously, you kind of look at that kind of situation where the players aren't exactly happy. Marvin Jones walked out of a player meeting and left the facility until coaches had to convince him to come back. Coaches aren't happy with how they're treating him and how they're being thrown under the bus by Meyer. It's really, in times like this, obviously, I've had my issues with Pete Carroll at times, but kind of just lucky to know that you don't have a situation like that where things are going the way that they are in Jacksonville. And the other piece of league news, former Super Bowl champion, Pro Bowl wide receiver Demaryius Thomas passed away on Thursday at the age of 33. Cause of death is currently unknown. With that being said, Demaryius Thomas is a great talent, great receiver, but more importantly, he had an incredible journey to get the NFL and was really just, as everything else we've heard from players and coaches and fans, was just a great human being. So for him to pass away is tragic, and obviously would like to keep thoughts with the Thomas family there. So Demaryius Thomas gone too soon. Looking ahead in Seahawks news, the record sits at 5-8 for Seattle. They sit at fourth in the West as the Niners did win their game against Cincinnati, over the weekend. So Seattle sits still at fourth in the NFC West, but still very much in the wild card hunt. Seattle is one game out of the 7th seed. It continues, really. Week 15, December 19th at the Los Angeles Rams in SoFi Stadium with a 1:25 p.m. Pacific time kickoff on Fox. That is a big game. Aaron Donald, Odell Beckham Jr., Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, LA's a tough team. LA's had our number for quite a while now. So again, if you really want to push for that winning season, you want to push for maybe a playoff spot, it's all going to start and continue with, I mean, this game against LA probably sets the tone simply because Houston, not exactly a good team, have had their struggles. This is really a big moment for Seattle to set their foot in the grass and say, hey, we're not just going to lay down and let this season end. So with that being said, switching over to the Seattle Storm here, the Seattle Storm and the WNBA announced their schedule for this upcoming season. This is going to be a shorter season, and you'll see that when I look at the dates. I show you the dates here. Going to be a shorter season simply because of World Cup and things like that, Olympics. So the Storm schedule was announced. The season will start on May 6th versus the Minnesota Lynx. Some important dates. Seattle plays the Phoenix Mercury in a rematch of the playoffs on May 14th versus the Phoenix Mercury. You can see the schedules there. If you need to pause the video and see just the home and away schedules, please feel free to do so. But the Storm returned to Climate Pledge Arena, was Key Arena last time they were there, after playing a couple of seasons up in Everett at Angel of the Winds Arena, as well as the Bubble in 2020, winning the championship that year. But it's you can see that the schedule is packed from May to August, mid-August there. The latest that the season will go is September 21st. That is the last possible finals game. Some key dates to note: December 19th is the draft lottery. April 11th is the draft. April 17th is training camp. April 22nd is when preseason games tip off. May 6th is when the regular season begins. July 8th through 10th is All-Star Weekend in WNBA. August 14th, the regular season ends. August 17th, playoffs begin. So you can also note there that the Storm will play their last few games on the road, facing Chicago, the reigning champs, August 9th, Minnesota on the 12th, and August 14th against Las Vegas. So 3-game stretch to end the year, beginning the year at home against Minnesota. It'll be really cool to see the Storm in that stadium, in the arena, pardon me. That's a big deal. And it's a big deal because Sue Bird Sue Bird's still considering retirement, not sure if she'll come back for a year or not, has expressed interest in playing in Climate Pledge Arena because of the way the facility is, how updated it is, how high-tech it is. And when the Storm announced their schedule, Sue Bird was front and center with the home and away schedules like I showed you there. So is that hinting towards a return? I couldn't tell you. I don't want to put an exact date on it, but I would lean towards yes, simply because when the Kraken played their home opener against Vancouver, Sue Bird was in person and was asked about playing in this building, what she thought of the facility, and she said that playing in Climate Pledge Arena was tempting. So with that being said, I would lean towards yes, but we still have WNBA offseason to continue with, free agency, trades, the draft. All of that still has to take place. Have to bring back Breanna Stewart, have to bring back Jewel Lloyd, and obviously Sue Bird sits at the top of that. So that is important to note. But we do get some important news after the WNBA has been relatively quiet over the past few weeks relatively quiet since the season ended with the Sky winning the title. So good to get some clarity about the season there and figuring that out. Looking into our Seattle Kraken here over the past week, a tough past week, playing a good team in Pittsburgh on Monday the 6th, losing that game by a score of 6-1, just an ugly game. Seattle gave up 3 goals in the first period, and Philip Grubauer was pulled after that third goal. I really can't blame him, though. Those 3 goals were all deflected off of either his teammates or the Penguins players themselves. Just a rush game, and Coach Dave Haxtell really said this is a game that we have to flush and we have to get out. He said it time and time again, that was a game that was below the bar of where we wanted to play, outside of the realm of where we wanted to play. So that Pittsburgh game, really tough. Pittsburgh's been a consistent team in the NHL for such a long time, but really just an ugly game there. December 9th versus the Winnipeg Jets. Seattle would lose the first game against Winnipeg 0-3. Again, I'm going to talk about it more, but this was a game that Seattle really got away from themselves, got back to the issues and mistakes that they were making early on in the season, didn't put up a goal, shut out at home. You never like being shut out. And then December 11th versus the Columbus Blue Jackets in a rematch from earlier this year, and a game that went to overtime. This game went to overtime as well, but Seattle would lose that game 5-4 in overtime. Player of the game, Brendan Tanev, 1 assist, 1 point, a 2+-, 1 shot on goal, and 1 hit. You'll notice there were no player of the game for those other 2 games simply because they were really ugly, and there's nobody that you really can point to for those players of the game. So to address those 3 losses, Pittsburgh, I'll just say it. It was an ugly loss. It was a terrible loss. It was something that is a game you don't want to ever see from your team, and something that needs to be flushed away, and you don't need to see it again. Winnipeg and Columbus. Winnipeg just couldn't get things going. Power play didn't work. The defenseman not helping out Philip Grubauer in goal. Just a struggle of a game, really. December 11th versus Columbus. Same thing. Seattle, well, not exactly. First period, Seattle puts the offensive pressure on. The forwards really playing like forwards should in this game. Seattle had the clear advantage after the first period. We get to the second period. Columbus scores 4 goals. It's not looking good. You head into the third period, 4-1. Third period, Seattle comes back, scores 3 goals to tie this game up, sending us to an overtime period. And then 55 seconds into that overtime period, Columbus is able to get a winner. It's the defensemen really giving up sloppy turnovers, turning the puck over, blocking your own goaltender, not pressuring. It's simple stuff that we looked at earlier in the year. Seattle is just, all the progress that we were making, beating 3 of the top teams in the league, beating Edmonton, all that progress seemed to just go out the window as if it didn't happen, right? That's all I've got for you. It was the game against Columbus is a good building block because you started off the game hot. Even the second period, the beginning of it, you started off hot, and you looked good. You were putting the pressure on, really taking care of things. That third period, resiliency, showing that you were not going to just sit down and say, hey, we're getting blown out at home, like that game against Pittsburgh. We're getting blown out at home. We got to get out of the ice. We got to get out of here. Showed some resiliency. Obviously frustrating to give up that goal 55 seconds to overtime. But again, even going to that, Jake Bean, who scored the game winner, was wide open in the faceoff circle and had a clear shot. And Marcus Johansson was screening his own goaltender. That kind of stuff cannot happen. Getting back to basics, getting rid of those mental lapses that have been happening that we've seen through the season. But again, I implore you, it is the first season that this franchise has been in the NHL, that has been in existence. A lot of these guys still learning how to play with each other. This is early on. This is still early on, but it was a frustrating result to see those past 3 losses play out the way that they did. December 11th, we have injury news for you. 3 members of the team entered COVID protocol. Forward Yanni Gourde and forward Riley Sheehan, as well as assistant coach Jay Leach, all entered COVID protocol. And with that being said, for the first time this year, and the first time technically in franchise history, media availability switched to Zoom. So normally, the day of the game, there's morning skate where the players have an optional practice to come out and skate on the ice at home. And there's some media availability. All of that was conducted over Zoom. Same with post-game press conference, all of it over Zoom. So the Kraken have a COVID issue right now. Yanni Gourde, Riley Sheehan, assistant coach Jay Leach, all in COVID protocol. Most recently, Captain Mark Giordano was in COVID protocol and just got back from Florida. So kind of tough there to deal with that. And to be down, Yanni Gourde, a good center, to be missing your assistant coach plays a factor as well. In response to those moves, forward Alexander True was recalled from Charlotte. If you don't know, Alexander True was a member of the Seattle Thunderbirds and is the first member of the Thunderbirds to play on home ice for the Kraken. So that is really exciting if you're a fan of hockey in Seattle here, as well as goaltender Chris Drieger was activated from injured reserve, and goaltender Joey Jacord, in response, was reassigned to Charlotte. In league-related news, the NHL 22 video game will include women's teams. The game will feature women's international teams for the first time ever. So looking ahead for the Kraken here, playing their next 4 games, 2 of them on the road, 2 of them at home. Their record sits at 9 wins, 15 losses, 3 overtime losses, recording 21 points. Their division standing is 8 in the Pacific Division. They have fallen back. Vancouver has taken over that 7th spot. They will travel to California for the first time ever, playing December 14th at the San Jose Sharks with a 7:30 p.m. Pacific time puck drop. December 15th at the Anaheim Ducks with a 7 p.m. puck drop. December 18th, they return home to play Edmonton with a 7 p.m. puck drop. And then December 19th versus the Toronto Maple Leafs at home, the first time in franchise history, with a 6 p.m. Pacific time puck drop. None of those games are going to be easy. Edmonton, a really great team. As I mentioned, beating Edmonton is a feat. Toronto, Austin Matthews, they've got a talented team. So you'd like to take care of business and on the road in California, but you've got two tough contests back at home when you return the next weekend. Heading into the OL Reign news, we're looking into now adding protection rosters. The official protection rosters for the Reign have dropped. We do have that news. The expansion draft itself takes place on the 16th here. It's a big deal. The Reign have a ton of talent up and down the roster. And anytime there's an expansion draft, it's always kind of splits people. It's like, okay, who are we protecting here? Who's priority? Contract, age, value, all of that comes into play here, and now we've got that to look at. Teams must protect 9 players on the roster, but before we get to protection rosters, we have to get into the offseason moves that were made prior to the protection rosters being made. We have here the players that are returning as of now, that is obviously pre-expansion draft, and the players that won't be returning to the Reign. 2 players were waived, midfielders Shirley Cruz and Rosie White. Both will look to get more playing time elsewhere. Defender Steph Cox announces her retirement. It is her second retirement from professional soccer. Contract offers for the 2022 season were extended to defender Lauren Barnes, forward Ziara King, goalkeeper and Washington State alumni Ella Diederich, and midfielder and league MVP this past season, Jess Fishlock. Options for 2022 were exercised for defensive player Madison Hammond, midfielder Nikki Stanton, who was just acquired in a trade this past week, and goalkeeper Cosette Morche. Her option was extended earlier this year and will be on loan. She'll be on loan in Sweden through June of 2022. The team declined the option for forward Miranda Nild, who is currently on loan in Sweden as well. The loan players from Olympic Lioness, the owner of the Reign, returned to their club back in Spain. That would include Eugenie Lesamer, Jennifer Marazon, and Sarah Booty, all returning to Olympic Lioness. The Reign roster by position now sits at goalkeepers are Ella Diederich, Cosette Morche, and Fallon Tullis-Joyce. At the defender side is Lauren Barnes, Amber Brooks, Celia, Alana Cook, Madison Hammond, Sam Hyatt, Sofia Huerta, Jimena Lopez, and Kristen McNabb. At the midfield is Angelina, Jess Fishlock, Kelsey Hedge, Rose Lavelle, Quinn, Nikki Stanton, and Danny Weatherholt. And up top at the forward position, Bethany Balser, Ziara King, Nicole Momiki, Leah Pruitt, Megan Rapinoe, and Ali Watt. Following that, the Reign acquired defender Sinclair Miramontes off of waivers. She was waived by Louisville on December 8th. And as a corresponding move, the Reign would make the transfer of Nicole Momiki to Lincoln Points FC in Sweden permanent. So just mention, the forward position, Nicole Momiki was up there, but just a few days after that, the Reign acquired a defender off of waivers and made Nicole's transfer to Sweden permanent. So Nicole, best wishes and everything. Thank you. Thanks to everything you did for the club. And then after that, the Reign officially announced their protected list for the 2022 expansion draft. As we switch over here, the 9 players that the Reign will protect are Angelina, Bethany Balser, Alana Cook, Jess Fishlock, Sofia Huerta, Rose Lavelle, Fallon Tullis-Joyce, and Ali Watt. So you can technically see there who the Reign are going to protect. I mean, this is a big deal. You've got a lot of talent up and down the roster. You've got some club originals still with the team since being in Memorial Stadium. Some of them are on the protected list. Some are not. We look at the Reign unprotected list. Club original Lauren Barnes, Amber Brooke, Celia, Ella Diederich, Madison Hammond, Kelsey Hedge, Sam Hyatt, Ziara King, Jimena Lopez, Kristen McNabb, Sinclair Miramontes, who was just acquired off of waivers, Cosette Morche, Leah Pruitt, Megan Rapinoe, Nikki Stanton, and Danny Weatherholt. So get one last look at the rosters there for off-season protected lists. With that being said, with the unprotected list being there, LA Angel City FC is not able to draft a forward from the Reign because of the trade that they made last week. So all the forwards are safe from LA, but San Diego, the Reign have not made any trades with San Diego regarding that. So technically, one of those players is exposed. As you can see there, as you heard me say, Megan Rapinoe is an unprotected player. But with that being said, I doubt that she's going to be picked simply because Megan's probably got a year or two left to play. It's highly expected that Megan and Sue Bird will retire in the same year. Sue Bird's looking at playing one more year. Megan Rapinoe more than likely doing the same. So they both probably finish out their careers this upcoming season in Seattle here. But again, I've seen crazier things happen. So looking ahead for the Reign, it's just preparation for the expansion draft. And that is our week in Seattle sports. I mean, we look ahead here. The Seahawks are playing the Rams after beating the Texans pretty handily. The Storm season was announced, but we still have some news until we actually hear anything else. I know that the draft lottery for the WNBA is this upcoming weekend, but the Storm are not going to have a high draft pick. Their Kraken really struggled in their past 3 games, really got away from what they were doing successfully the past few weeks, and will look to right the ship down in California and coming home to play a couple tough teams in Edmonton and Toronto. And then the expansion drafts, protected list and unprotected list were made clear for the Reign, and we will hear about the expansion draft on Thursday. So next week when we see it, we will know who's gone from the team, or if somehow the Reign were able to pull something off to get more draft immunity. With that being said, we will see you next week, inching closer to the holidays. So happy holidays to you. Take care, be safe. I know it's cold out there. So until then, stay warm and be well.